Welcome to Weather God's Wisdom. Today we will be discussing Tropical Storm Arthur here off the southeast coast and Cyclonic Storm Amphan, which is intensifying right now pretty quickly. But first we will be talking about Arthur. As always, these thoughts are mine and mine alone, and always refer to the National Hurricane Center for the latest on Tropical Storm Arthur and your local National Weather Service stations up here in North Carolina and South Carolina for the latest on your area and how it will be affected by Tropical Storm Arthur as it moves closer to the North Carolina coastline. All right, so today Arthur has kind of just gradually organized here and is continuing to gradually intensify here. It is still 45-mile-per-hour tropical storm. It is not very strong, but it is noteworthy. And it should be passing over the Gulf Stream here pretty soon, and the convection should kind of cool a little bit today over near the centers, so that should allow for some intensification and consolidation because this system is still kind of broad, and you can see that by looking at what it is spitting out on the western side here. It has been spitting out mesovortices that are quickly being wrapped back into the overall circulation, but until it stops spitting out these mesovortices around this main circulation right here, this system is going to take a while to intensify, which is why the National Hurricane Center only has this intensifying to a 60-mile-per-hour tropical storm, other than, of course, the obvious limitation of the cooler sea surface temperatures that are in here due to it being May and not July. So as the system continues on northward, do not expect it to intensify too much, but it should still be a rough go if it does indeed pass where forecast models are expecting it to pass, which is very close to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Now, let us look at, that's the Indian Ocean. We'll be talking about that in a minute. Let us look at the details here. Okay, so here's Arthur, and here's a trough that is draped over the Great Lakes region and is stretching all the way south into the Ark-La-Tex region due to a mesolow that developed yesterday that has kind of fused with this system and has strengthened it a little bit. And what we learned last night was that the strength of this system ultimately will determine the strength of the ridge out to the east of Arthur. And so since this has been trending stronger, if you look at the lower dynamics that are steering Arthur here, you can see that the ridge is a little stronger, and if you actually look at the overall sounding for this region, you can tell that most of the lower levels of the atmosphere are largely winds coming out of the south and southeast here. This is the steering layer that you're going to want to look at for Arthur. And so as this continues, and you can see there's very light shear right now, so that's also good for the intensification of the system. But regardless, anyway, you can see that the overall direction that is being pushed upon the storm is largely out of the south, southeast, and south, so it will continue on northward as it intensifies. And as it intensifies, you can see this ridge still is in place here and is actually a little stronger because this system is a little stronger. And so over the next 18 hours, you can see a kind of general northward drift. And then it starts to feel the tug of this trough in here, and it will begin to move to the northeast. You can see between 18 and 24 hours this kind of pull, and that's because this trough has a little more influence on the lower level flow that is guiding Arthur, and it's starting to dent the ridge that is over the Atlantic here, and will kind of guide it around this ridge, and it should pass close to the Carolina coast. And whether or not this landfalls is not a super big difference whether or not it does landfall because of the strength and nature of the system, because it is a broad system and is the core is still forecast to kind of come over the Outer Banks here. There's not going to be much changed whether or not it passes, say, 30 to 40 miles off or it comes on shore. So as the system is kind of just, as this trough kind of decays, it brings the system along with it, and its remnants end up impacting the Northeast. But that is one model solution. Here's another. European model has a very different solution playing out for the system, but within the near term, it still brings it very close to the Outer Banks. You can see that this trough in the short term does amplify this ridge to the east because of the pressure gradient is stronger between the trough and the ridge. There's a little bit of a connection in here, and so it kind of influences the trough or the ridge that will bring it close. And so the European model and the GFS are beginning to be in a little better of an agreement here about where Arthur will be going. And bottom line, for the Outer Banks and coastal North Carolina, you should be expecting tropical storm conditions tomorrow around this time, and it should be pretty interesting conditions. Don't go on a boat, or just practice safety precautions like you would if it was in the middle of July and you were getting a tropical storm, or middle of August and you were getting a hurricane. Just stay indoors. I know there's not much to do right now, but please do stay indoors while this system passes. It is a tropical storm, which is enough to warrant some damage in here if it does actually come across, or if it does intensify as expected according to the GFS model. The European model has a little weaker, and the GFS model has it a little stronger, and we will see how the storm does intensify over the next day. Anyway, now that we got that out of the way, let us talk about Amphan. Amphan is currently strengthening pretty rapidly right now because it has closed off its core. If you look at, that is not the right one. This is microwave pass from a few hours ago. You can see that the eye has been almost completely shut off from any mid-level shear that has been imparted upon the system. It is a little weaker on this side because of mid-level shear that is being imparted on the system from the northeast, and which has kind of skewed the system to the eastern side. And if you look back at the water vapor imagery, you can clearly see that the system is beginning to become more symmetric. So it appears that that mid-level shear is beginning to relax a little bit, which is, again, all of this development is really bad, because if this continues, it will probably be a pretty strong cyclone up in this region and will be moving towards the Ganges Delta here, which has a very high population density and is very low lying areas, so it does not take a lot to cause a lot of problems in this area. And so what we will be watching with Amphan is how much it can intensify within the next 24 or 48 hours before it begins to kind of become more poleward oriented and kind of just slow down its intensification. But if you look at the oceanic heat content that it will be passing over, it really does not slow down the the oceanic heat content does not lower over the next 48 hours, and it really does not exit this very high oceanic heat content area until hour 72. So this is giving it a lot of time. And you can see even more, the sea surface temperatures are very high in this area and will continue to be high all the way up into pretty much landfall at this point. And what we will be looking for here is any slight deviation in the track at this point. And there's really not a whole lot that is changed in the track forecast for the system. It is within the next 3 days that it should be making landfall here. And you can see this is the European model that we're showing here right now, and you see it comes into Kolkata here, and Bangladesh is on the eastern side of the system, and the GFS model practically has it in the exact same area, a little faster, but it has it in the same area as the European model, a little bit to the east, but not much. This is not a huge deviation at all, really. And the models are becoming increasingly more in agreement about where this will come ashore, and this is really, really bad, because this is such a highly populated area in here, especially near Kolkata, because that is a city of almost 20 million people, and it will take a lot to evacuate these people within the next 3 days. But let's hope that they can get it done, because this storm is extraordinarily strong on all model forecasts, and it really is beginning to impress here and is starting to show that strength on satellite imagery. And what we will be watching for the next 48 hours is to see if this eye can really clear out, and that will determine whether or not it is super strong or is just, like a category 3. But once storms start getting up into that upper stratosphere of intensity, it doesn't really matter, because this area is so very prone to severe tropical cyclones. And if we were to get what is forecast according to most models, which is an upper end category 4 making landfall around here, this would be very, very catastrophic. And probably from the likes that we have not seen in recent history with cyclones in the Bay of Bengal. And really, there is not a whole lot that is stopping the system up until landfall. Maybe some continental dry air will get mixed in. We saw that last night, but it did not really work as we thought it was going to work, and so the system's core has shut itself off from most dry air, and this is very cold cloud tops in here that are beginning to expand, and this cloud field is beginning to expand to the northeast, which is very bad, because that is what we were thinking was going to limit the storm, the mid-level shear that's in here. And it's still there, but it's not as strong as it was, and there's not really much that is stopping the system at this point. So we will be watching this and seeing how the storm progresses. Right now, it has begun an intensification process that is pretty significant. As this eye continues to try to clear out over the next 24 or 48 hours, we will see how the system is intensifying, and I will be back with you guys tomorrow discussing Arthur and Amphan, and might have a video later tonight discussing Amphan again to see how it has progressed. Anyway, that is all for today. This is a shorter video today, but I just wanted to get this out here, and so anyway, that's all I have to say. As always, stay safe and stay tuned to the latest on all the weather sites and everything, and make sure that you do stay tuned to the National Hurricane Center and National Weather Service for the latest on Arthur, and stay tuned to Weather Underground for the latest on Amphan, because that's really the only site that I'm seeing that is really putting out stuff about the system. So, goodbye.